Good morning. My name is Larry LeCount. I'm with West Shore Tool Service in Peshtigo, Wisconsin. We're the distributor for Dyna products in the state of Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan. Today we're going to make a video covering the preventive maintenance and care of the Dyna cutting system, covering the bar, chain, sprocket, and oiler. On the preventive maintenance part of it, we're going to show you how to dissect your bar and chain, the cutting system, maintain it, what to look for, how to remedy the problems you find, and take care of it. Remember, that is the heart of the machine, and that's what makes it work. So proper maintenance and care of that part of it is optimum. It has to happen. It has to happen like clockwork. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to open up our chain guard door, or bar and chain guard. That'll give us access to the cutting system. The cutting system actually consists of the bar, the chain, sprocket, and the oiler. So what we're going to do is we want to get rid of some of this dirt around here, and what I got in my hand and what I'm using is basically just a good old can of brake cleaner. The reason I like getting this out of the way is we don't want to foul the oil ports with any contaminants such as sawdust or anything inside. Now I got a little cordless battery operated impact here. I'm going to take these nuts off. Just to take them off, I wouldn't recommend using it to tighten them up. I put them on the shelf over here so I don't lose them. Now the oiler and the bracket that holds the bar and chain in place, here's the port that I was talking about. I like to keep this clean, so I'm going to wipe this off, make sure it's not fouled or contaminated in any way. Just let that lay over the side here. It's out of the way. It's not going to hurt anything laying there. The other thing is 7/16 on the chain tensioner, which is located behind the bar. You just want to loosen that up just a little bit. It just helps remove the bar, and you eliminate any chance of possibly putting a burr on the adjuster or anything like that. So it's just a little precautionary thing. Take the bar and chain and rock it forward. It'll come down. Chain will fall free. It'll come right off. Okay, one thing else, now that we got the bar and chain off, like I said, you want to take and just make sure that there's no fouling in the ports and that it's clean, so when we come to put it on, we don't have to worry about it. Now right here is an opportune time. Here's the tensioner I was talking about. It's free floating in here. You just want to make sure, just pull up on it. Make sure you can turn the adjusting bolt easily, that the threads maybe aren't galled up a little bit from somebody over tightening it. And right now is a perfect opportunity to just clean this down a little bit, get everything out of here, clean the sprocket, and then check the sprocket for wear. What you're looking for is any abnormal wear on the pins or the base of the sprocket where the chain would ride on the sprocket. And this sprocket being brand new, well, we don't have any wear on it. But every time you change the chain, you want to look at that. Very important. Remember, it's a cutting system. The bar, the chain, the sprocket, the oiler, it's all part of the cutting system. Every part of that system has a direct relationship with another part of it, and it will tend to wear on it. So if one part goes bad, it all goes bad, not just one part. So you have to keep an eye on it. Okay, what we're going to cover right now is another part of the cutting system, and that's going to be the oiler. It says here on our tank, use winter grade oil, and that's true. in the fall. But if you're cutting during the summer months, use a good high quality bar and chain oil, a virgin bar oil with a high tacking agent in it. And the reason you want the high tacker, it sticks to the bar and chain. That's where it's got to stay. So when it's hot in the summer, use regular summer grade bar and chain oil. When the temperature gets cooler in the fall, yes, go to the winter grade bar and chain oil with the same high tacker in it. It'll be much better for the cutting system. What it does is it comes down, goes into this pump. Now this is a 12 volt pump, and what turns it on is when the clamping pressure in the system here meets its pressure to hold the log down, it'll turn this pump on. This pump will run the oil through the regulator valve. You can adjust the flow of your oil here. This is a check valve. This brass fitting, which it looks like, is actually a check valve. So it doesn't let anything come back to the pump. It goes down into the mounting plate of the cutting system, and again, this hose goes to the left side of the bar. To the left side. Otherwise, if it's over here, you put it on upside down, that oil's coming down, it's not benefiting the bar and chain whatsoever. And what's going to happen then, unbeknown to you that it's on wrong, that chain and that bar is going to get hot. You're going to end up developing a burr on the rails of the bar. And pretty soon, what will happen is all of a sudden, as the bar comes down, it's going to stop. It's going to stop a third of the way through the log. It's going to stop a quarter of the way through the log. Or it might even make it halfway through the log. But it will stop. What's happening is that burr is expanded wider than the kerf of the chain. And it's locking the bar up to where it cannot come down any further. And that's because there's been no lubricant going to the bar and chain to keep everything moving nicely. And that's what will happen there. And we'll continue on. We're going to sharpen the chain, check the bar for burrs and wear. All right, let's go do it. All right, we got the bar and chain, we got everything inside here, and what we're going to be doing is washing this bar up. We're going to be washing the rail, we're going to clean the groove, we're going to check the bearing, and most of all, we're going to check the oil ports, which we'll get into a little bit further later. So right now, let's see what we can do as far as cleaning this thing up. If you don't have a parts washer, you can stand it up in a 5-gallon pail. Any place. You don't want to spill any more of the solvent. Usually mineral spirits will work real well as far as cleaning it. In fact, a lot of the parts cleaners today, that's what they use, is mineral spirits in them. So I'll get this tip washed up. And I got another can of brake cleaner here. And here's why I use the brake cleaner. It dries right away. It lets you continue on. It'll dry your hands out, believe me, but it'll make it to where you can continue on with your job. And you're not getting dirty anymore. You're not getting anything. You're slipping and sliding. It'll be all done. Okay. Stand that up, and I'm just going to blow it down a little bit, help it dry. Now, I know you can't see it, but you will when we get over to the table and we start cleaning the groove in the rail. And that's when we're going to check the oil ports, and I can see just by looking down on these that they're plugged. So one more thing we're going to do is we have the bar cleaned. We're going to set that off to the side, and we're going to bring our chain in. Now you want to wash the chain for a couple reasons. Most of which is you don't want the dirt, you don't want the oil, the bar oil on it, and that's for sharpening, because it'll get in your stone. If if you're using a regular grinding stone, it'll get in the stone and it'll actually cause a buildup, and it'll make it burn your chain. It'll take the temper out of the chain. It'll make it real hot. You don't want that. So we're going to keep the oil and the dirt off of it. Clean it. There again, so we're not being held up by anything. We're just going to rinse it down with some brake cleaner. It'll dry it real quick so we can get going with what we're doing and get it done. We're going to go over to the other side and we're going to sharpen the chain. We're going to check the chain for stretching or any abnormal wear to the links and to the drivers. So I'm going to just set that right here for now. On the bar, we're going to check the bar for squareness. And what we mean by that is we're going to check these rails to make sure one isn't higher or lower than the other and that they're wearing evenly. Because what happens is if a rail starts to wear uneven, it affects the chain, it'll wear the chain, and also it will bring on another case of the bar stopping when it's coming down. Through the log, it'll be partway through the log, a third of the way through the log, halfway, whatever the distance, all of a sudden it stops. And what's going on there is because the rails are worn unevenly, the chain cocks and it won't let it cut anymore, so it stops. So we'll cover that a little bit further down the road here. We're going to go over and check this, clean the rails, and get it ready to go. All right, now we're at the grinder. We got the bar. We're going to get actually I even noticed that our rail right here isn't quite to meet the tip. This tip is a replaceable tip. So if you blow the bearing out or bend a sprocket or crack a sprocket, whatever the case may be, this tip can be replaced. So you don't have to spend the big bucks again on this 25-inch bar. You can do it and get by rather cheap. So it is a nice thing, but you got to make sure that where the bar meets the tip, that step is even, it's flush all the way across. So we'll check that right away as we're squaring this bar. All right, I'm going to turn the grinder on and let's see what we can do. Yep. If you can see where one rail is shiny and the other one isn't quite so shiny, the one on this side isn't quite so shiny, means we're grinding on the back rail and not on the rail towards me. We're at 90 degrees, so everything here should be fine. We're going to continue to square this bar. Okay, and we have the top rail. That looks pretty good. We're shiny on both sides. I'm going to flip it over and do the other side. The one thing you want to do is make sure you don't have a burr on the edge that you're going to be pulling on the table. If you got any burr, it just makes it harder. This is a new bar. I don't really have a burr built up on there. But if you did, you'd take the grinder very similar to this and just run it over the edge. Having the wheel turn in towards you. That's all it takes, just to get that burr off. So as you're sliding it on the table, it doesn't hurt, it doesn't hold it back. Okay, that's pretty good. We're pretty close. And we're going to put a finish grind on it now. With this particular machine, I would use an 80 to 100 grit paper on it. You're not trying to tear the bar up. You just want to grind it down gradually so you don't take too much off, because there is a depth restriction for the rails. And I'll tell you what that is a little bit later. I can show you with a gauge that you have to watch. We're going to move to the finish sander now. Okay, what we're going to be doing is taking the bar and putting it on this grinder here. This has got a stone in it, where this one here has got paper on it. This one here is our finished grinder. Any heavy gouges or anything, that'll end up coming out here. Now that we got done doing a coarse grind, our finished grind on this grinder and the tip, what we want to do is on the bar itself is from grinding, we're going to have a little sharp lip from the grinding stone. So you want to take a file and you want to just strike it. That's all you're going to do. Flip it over, strike it. We want to get that burr off of there, because when you come to put this back on the machine, I guarantee you, you're going to cut your finger. There. Now we're all set. The last thing we got to do on this bar is clean it. We're going to blow it out, clean it. We're going to check the oil ports. There's a little hole from this hole that goes up, that comes out in the rail. Oil goes in here, comes up, and that chain picks it up, and that's what lubricates your tip and the whole rail. So with that said, I'm going to go wash this up. The reason we're washing it is we want to get all the grinding dust out of this bearing on the end, and anything that would be in the rail that would follow its way up there with the oil. We want to get that out of there, because that will for sure blow that tip out. What we're going to do now, I just got done washing it up. We're going to I got a little blowgun here. It's got a metal tip, narrow. We're going to try and blow the rail out to make sure there's nothing left in it. Flip it over, do it again. Okay, now the tip is clean. There's one last thing we got to do. Oil comes into this port right here. If you remember the black plate that we took off, the hose is on the left. Oil comes in here, goes through a little tiny port right there. So what you want to do is make sure that port is open and that you can see your tip cleaner come up in there. Move it around, make sure it's good and clean. You can clean the rails, you can clean your bracket, you can clean everything, but if you don't clean that little port that goes up to the rail, you're still not getting any oil. If you don't get any oil, the bar's going to get hot. Your chain is going to get hot, the pins in your chain is going to get hot, and the chain is going to stretch. As far as this bar goes, this one is ready to go back on the machine. I guess one of the things that you want to look at on a chain is, first you want to look at the drivers, which I have inspected prior to this point. You want to make sure there's no burrs or anything like that on the drive links. Next thing you want to look at is the heel of the chain. The heel of the chain, you want to look for wear marks on the heels. In other words, any burrs sticking out on the sides, any prolonged wear to make it U-shaped or curved, anything like that, that would be an indicator that something's wrong with the cutting system. The rail on the bars, which you would have already checked, and if there was a lot of wear on the bar rails, for sure you want to look at the heels of the side straps and the presets. Also, you want to make sure when you're looking at the chain, you want to make sure that there's no broken teeth or bent over rakers or bent teeth. If you do find them, replace them. This tooth, these rakers get cut at 50 thousandths. If you look at the side of the raker, it's stamped right in there. There's a number. Whether it be 3/8 chain or 325, it doesn't matter. This number is in the thousandths on how far that raker is down from the shear point of the tooth. And this particular chain, an 18HX, this raker is 50 thousandths below the shear point of the tooth. With that said, let's see if we can get an edge put on this chain, and we're all set. I've already preset adjustments on it, so let's see what we can do. Now you can see that if you watch the amount of sparks, if you guys are using a regular grinding stone, there'll be a lot of sparks flying. On a Borzon, diamond Borzon wheel, not so much. And all you got to do is touch a good tooth. If you're doing regular maintenance on this machine, okay, now I had painted that tooth. What I'm going to do is just take a look here now. You can see there wasn't very many sparks coming off, and you can see because I painted it, we're sharp all the way through on that tooth. A little bit underneath. So if we got to go through this chain again, we know we're real close. This chain itself that we took off the machine earlier won't go back on that machine today. We'll be taking a different one to put on the machine. The reason for that is this chain, as all our chains, even for regular saw customers, these are soaked in oil overnight. The type of oil that we soak them in is a bar oil. It's a winter grade bar oil. It's lighter. It'll soak into the pins a lot quicker. Because as you watched before, we washed the chain. Therefore, we took most of the lubricant out of the pins. And it's very important that you put it back in. Otherwise, you're going to put this on a machine, you're going to fire it up, it's going to go around, and in a half a dozen revolutions, that chain's going to be hot, those pins are going to be hot, they're going to lose their temper, and the chain's going to stretch out. So if you're grinding for someone, they don't need it back right away, soak it overnight. Get a pig, stand it up, let the oil drain down. Next morning you can put the chain in a box for the customer to pick up, or go put it on the saw or out on the machine. It's not a complicated process. It saves the chain. It's a service to the customer is what it is, and that's what you try to do. You can show them why their chain is wearing out. Okay, I've been around the chain completely once. Now here I'm looking at the back side, and I'm not sure that you can see that good, but the red is still there on the cutting part on the shearing edge of the chain. We got it taken off. So I'm assuming that the majority of the teeth all around that side are that way. We're going to adjust it up and go around it again, both sides. So both sides of the chain, both sets of teeth will be the same length. Now just because it's a new chain doesn't mean that those teeth are all the same. Contrary to what Oregon says, believe me, they're not. So we're going to give it another spin. We're going to bring this up just a little bit. I backed it off. Now we got a nice clean grind. Everything's good. So I'm going to put it back in. And we'll get this chain done. There's no place you got to be that bad that you can't sharpen the chain the right way. Remember, the whole thing is a cutting system. No one part does the work. It all works together. So it's very important that they're all in good shape. You inspect and take care of the whole cutting system. The other reason that we soak the chain in the oil is, especially on the processors, being that they sit outside, well, there's very few of them that end up in a building, but seeing that they sit outside, it's good to soak them in oil. Everything gets coated, get some of the rust off, at least coats it so it inhibits it from going anywhere else. It's just a good all-around thing to do. It by far makes the chain last quite a bit longer. If you got to work to cut wood, you're doing something wrong. Again, if you notice the sparks, there's not a lot of sparks that we make. We're not heating the tooth up. I'm holding on to it, but I'm basically letting the wheel do the work. Okay. There we have it. We got the chain over to the raker grinder now. We're going to set this up so that we're at 50 thousandths lower than the shearing edge of that tooth. What we want to do is bring that into the wheel. We're going to, okay, right there, we're touching it. We're going to take it up a little bit. We just missed it. So we're going to call it good right about there. Okay. Now, we're going to bring our stop in, pull it back. We're going to adjust so that the raker is right underneath this front surface of the grinding stone, because that's where we checked the height for the tooth. All right. We're going to get that out of the way. And on the Sylvie, every notch is 5 thousandths. So we're going to go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. Like I said, 50 is the maximum. So we're going to leave it at 45 thousandths. This chain will cut just wonderful at 45 thousandths. It'll be a little bit easier on the machine, and it'll help the life of the chain. We're going to take it away into the tooth. You're skipping every other tooth. This is a reversible machine also. This chain will cut even, it'll cut straight, and most of all, it'll cut fast. Okay, we did one side. We're going to stop the wheel. We're going to reverse it. Remember that when you're doing this, hold that chain. When you hold it, you got to hold it tight, snug. This chain, we're going to coil this up, and it's going to go in a tub with bar oil. It'll stay there till tomorrow. Okay. Here's the chain that we just sharpened. I'm going to take and fold it up a little bit. Put it in the bucket. I always wear gloves when I do this. I'm not partial to getting my hands cut up anymore. Here's what we're using. We're using Dolmar oil. It's low temp oil. Okay. Now this particular oil is canned by Spectrum. Spectrum cans for a lot of people, and it is a virgin bar oil. As you can see how light the color is. It's a very, very, very good oil. We're going to take and put that in here. I normally have an ice cream pail that we have oil in, that we keep just for that. However, right now it's full. So we have our bar oil, we have our chain, it's in there soaking. That lightweight oil will soak into those rivets. Tomorrow morning we'll hang it up, let it drip back into the pail, and we'll be all set to put it on the machine. Okay, what we have here is the cutting system for the Dyna Firewood processors. This system actually is the same on every model they have other than the size. So we go from an 18-inch bar up to a 25-inch bar with a 20-inch bar in the middle. This particular bar and chain and cutting system came off a 15, but you would also see it on the 16. This is the bar that we ground up. This is not the chain that we just sharpened, that one's being soaked. And this is a brand new sprocket. The one thing I wanted to show you is this tool here. This is a tool I would highly recommend for everyone to have. This part of the tool here is made for cleaning your bar. And I'm going to show you. You lock it in here, and it cleans out any of the sawdust or gunk with oil that's caked up that would have got packed down in. And that stops the oil from coming up here and getting on the tip. Got to have oil coming up to the bar nose, to this bearing. Otherwise you're going to burn it up. So I just checked that. Now I'm going to do the other side. We washed this bar up pretty good. We cleaned it. I'm not getting anything out of there. I'm looking down inside. I can see steel. I can see my oil port up here. That's clean. I can see my oil port here. That's clean. So other than lubricating the bar tip right now, and I'm going to do that, this bar is ready to go. Take some bar oil, lay it down in here, turn your sprocket, go around it a few times. I just take this oil mix bottle, I fill it up with lightweight bar oil. That works real good for getting into this bearing. That bearing will have oil, there will be oil there the first time you start it up, so it doesn't stress that bearing out. The other thing that you'll want to do when you put the chain on the bar, on the machine, you want to take your oil and you want to run a bead of oil down this bar. That's going to help when you run it for the first time. You'll have lubrication on the rail. You'll have lubrication on the foot of the heel of the chain. So on cold startup, you're not going to have that heat buildup that you normally would have. So I'm just going to do that. The drive links will take this oil right up to the sprocket, to the bearing. So on initial startup, we're going to be all set. We're not going to have any trouble. We'll redo this when we put that bar and chain back on. The other thing I wanted to show you, this tool also, I talked about a chain stretching. This tool also, if you put right here, it says align hole over rivet head on chain. Put it right there. Now that gives you a tolerance on these two lines. New chain, when it gets stretched out to here, get rid of it. Because what's going to happen is you're changing the pitch of the chain. This is 404 pitch. And as it stretches out, the distance between every 3 rivets changes. First rivet, second, third rivet. It changes. So now, your drive pins, they don't change. They stay right where they are. Now, these drive links are starting to cut those pins because they don't line up and drop in where they're supposed to. They'll start climbing because they're stretched out. They're either hitting the front part of this pin or the heel of the other pin. So, you change the pitch. This pitch is stationary. That's what causes the sprocket to wear. So by not using enough oil, by using the wrong oil, not using the proper oil, or by using waste oil that makes the chain stretch, because there is no lubrication factor there at all. You're wrecking your chain, you're wrecking your sprocket, you're wrecking the sprocket and bearing in your bar, and you're wrecking the rails on the bar. You wreck the whole cutting system. On the other side is the bar depth gauge. In other words, the depth of the rail, deepness, how deep the rail. So after grinding it so many times, you got to periodically check your depth. And right here, because of the oil that we put on there, now you can see when I pull it up, or I can see anyway, yeah, we're a good 3/16 of an inch above the line. When it gets down to that line, it's time to replace the bar. Well, we got our cutting system back out here with bar, chain, nuts. Well, chain sharp, bars squared up, everything's ready to go. What I did before attempting to put the bar and chain back on, I lowered the adjusting cog all the way to the bottom, or pretty close to it. It just makes it a little easier to get the chain around the sprocket and the plate set back on there so you can adjust the tension. So with that said, let's see how we do. I get it on there, get it in the plate, get it in the cog. We got our drive links around, everything's fine. Let's put our plate on. Now remember, and I can't stress this enough, the hose goes to the left side. Chain goes up, comes back down, it's got to bring the oil with it. If you put it over here, the oil goes down and never gets any lubrication on the bar and chain. With that said, we're going to get this on there. And then we'll tension the chain. A guy can do this a couple different ways, but I take them finger tight. It kind of keeps everything in a line. Sometimes I can get the wrench in here, and then it's easier to take up the slack on the adjuster in the back to where the wrench will start doing something. Now we'll get the 7/16 socket. These are 9/16 nuts. There's a 7/16 socket on the back side on the tensioner. Now these chains on a roller nose bar, you're accustomed to a chainsaw. This will be quite a bit tighter than what you'd run a chainsaw. I can pull that whole drive link out. We're going to take it a little bit tighter than that. So this is pretty good right where you see it here. Get about a half a tooth out on a tug. When we tighten this, I like to pull back on it a little bit. Snug it, because that bar is going down, so it's going to pop that way anyway. Give it a good tug. That's about all we need. Chain is good. Double check it. Make sure everything's in the sprocket and that we didn't mess up someplace. You should be good. Check the hose. Make sure we didn't get the hose hooked on something where it'll tear it out, which we don't. We can close the door now. This machine's ready to go.